We continue the subject of Hafarat Nedarim, meaning annulment of vow, following the text in the Torah, book of Bamidbar, chapter 30, when it's a husband and wife, the husband can annul or ratify her vow. The question is, for how long he can do that? The Torah used the term, that day, biyom shum'o. Does that mean 24 hours from the moment he heard? Does that mean from that moment until sunset? How far you go with the concept of annulment? Another important clarification needed is the two opposite, which is the Torah said in one hand, if the husband agreed either by saying or confirming or by being acquiesced, that's called kiyum neder. Versus hafara, if the husband said, I disagree and ratified it and revoke it. So we based on the Mishnah, which we studied yesterday, the Mishnah tells us that it's a broader question, which is if the husband can say, I retroactively annul vows. Or for example, today, let's say it's Sunday, I'm going away for 3 or 4 days, all the vows you're going to make from now up to Thursday or Friday will be revoked. So does that mean that all those vows can have a revocation retroactively, even she is not even pronounced a manner of vow? Or you said that the effectiveness appeal only upon her expression of vow, and there his annulment. His annulment meaning he needs to be present, or he can do it in the matter of not being there. Furthermore, we based that question on yesterday's discussion. If she said, for example, I'll become a Nazirite, okay, and somebody else hear that, and he said, and me too, and the husband come in and he revoke her vow, it means that her vow has no effect by any mean, and therefore somebody else who was a piggy bag has nothing to do with that, and the vow is total void. Or since that moment before the husband revoke has an effect, and therefore someone else who heard that and said I am too, he is taking upon himself the manner of vow of Nazirite, and by revocation of the husband is only applied to her, not others. So that's basically the disputation between Rabbanan, the sages, and Rabbi Eliezer, which we studied yesterday. Based on that discussion, we have a juxtaposition to a similar concept, which is the idea of the ritual bath, mikveh. We said that the mikveh is the manner of purification, meaning the person duck in the mikveh. So basically by ducking in the mikveh and coming out of the mikveh, the person become pure. So the question is, the Rambam tells us, there is a concept called tovel v'sheretz beyado. A person, hypothetically speaking, carries something that is impure. For example, you have in his hand a dead animal, right? And while touching a dead animal, rendering ritually impurity, he ducking himself in a mikveh. So you have here two contradictions. In one hand, ducking the mikveh can purify the person. On the other hand, carries in his hand something that is contain impurity, that contaminated, can transfer, rendering ritual impurity, created the opposite situation. So Reb Chaim elaborate on this Rambam, and he said the big question in this Rambam is, if by ducking in a mikveh he become pure, but by holding it means that that purity is coming back to the state of impurity, or by holding it throughout the time of ducking, that's already avoiding him from become any manner of purity. So that's basically the discussion. We are on page, today we're going to study page 76, but at this point we start with page 75b, 6 lines from the bottom of the page. Tashma Amru lo leRabbi Eliezer. The sages said to Rabbi Eliezer. So we based our avenue by the Ran. The Ran tells us that the same way as the person can revoke his vow after they taking effect, the same way a person can, at least at the first glance, revoke his wife's vow retroactively. So what's the proof? Uma mikveh. Here is the manner of juxtaposition, the same way that a ritual bath shema'ale et hatme'in mitumatan, that if someone was rendered ritual impurity and he dug himself in the mikveh, in the ritual bath, he become a pure. Ein matzil al hathorim miletameh, does not shield those who are pure from become ritual impurity. Meaning, if the person was pure while he dug himself, so that manner of ducking in a ritual bath will not change his status from touching something that is not pure afterward. Why? Because the Torah said clearly in Leviticus 11, verse 36, Ach ma'ayan uvo mikve mayim yihye tahor venogea benivlatam yitma, which means even the pure person is ducking in the hot water. The moment he touch impure creeping animal, for example, he become ritually impure, even he is within the domain of the ritual bath. So how much so? Adam she'ein ma'aleh et hatme'im mitumatam, a person who does not raise those who are impure from their state of ritual impurity. For example, the one explained, hypothetically speaking, imagine that the person swallow a small creeping animal, for example, and then he throw it out. So this, for example, they use the term of ring, that it's impure. The moment it happened, that entity remains ritually impure. So therefore, no din shelo yatzil et al hatehorim miltameim, which means the person, he cannot avoid ritual impurity and cannot remove ritual impurity. So it means you derive from that Rabbi Eliezer derived from this kal vachomer, that when a husband revoke the vow of his wife retroactively, it doesn't carry any effect. 76. Eima Seifa Amru lo leRabbi Eliezer. So here there is a rejection, Gemarrah rejecting this conclusion, and go back to the point of Rabbi Eliezer. What? You learn that the husband can revoke the wife's vow that was made earlier. How much so you agree that he can do it retroactively? Im matbilim kli tameh litaher, if you're taking a vessel and you immerse in the mikveh in order to purify that vessel from ritual impurity, yatbilu kli lechsheitma litaher, we the same way immerse a tahor utensil, so it will become impure in the future. Shma mina, you derive from that, chaylin, it take effect, and the revocation will take place only afterward. Amrei, so the rabbis respond to him and said, no, it's not a contradiction. Why? Rabbanan lo kaimei lehon beta'amei de Rabbi Eliezer. Rabbanan, the sages were not clear in the reasoning of Rabbi Eliezer, v'hacheka amar lei. That's the way they said to him, Mai svira lach, what you meant when you said that the husband can annul vows while she did not annul them? Isvira lach dechailin uvatlin. If you hold that this vow ratified in advance or immediately, tehevei kli tshuvtach. So this matter of vessel will be the response to that point. Ilos viralach dechailin. If you tell me that that those vow taking effect and then immediately revoked, you hold that will not be the case if the husband already made a statement in advance that any matter of vow retroactively will not be in effect. So the claim of the mikveh we just mentioned earlier will be a response to your claim. So the whole concept is, if you remember before Shoshana we do annulment of vows, or in Yom Kippur, right? So you said any manner of vow from now ulehaba, in the future. So there are those who bring the view of the Rishonim, the early rabbis, that said that when you have a mikveh for dishes, right, the kelim, the one you take in dishes and duck them, it's basically, the reason is because it's a concept that's called tum'at akum. You have those who idol worshipping, and the moment they attach those utensils is a problem. So we purify that by ducking it. But the concept, some say that you have to do first agala and then tvilah. That's not the view of the common rabbis, but it's important to know that there is a notion like that. Also, it's important, Kesef Mishneh is a very famous Kesef Mishneh, which is the commentator on the Rambam. He asked a question, when exactly the person become ritually impure? Is that mean the moment he entered the mikveh, or the moment that he walked out of the mikveh? So he is medayek, he's going by the language of the Rambam, and he said the only time the person becomes ritually pure is from the moment he walks out of the mikveh, not by walking in, which makes a difference in halacha, not for now. Tashma. So now they bring a proof from different direction. How? Amar lahem Rabbi Eliezer, he said, I have for you a different proof, which is the point of the seeds. In general, you have legumes, or you have a crop that basically the seed you sow, you're planting in the ground in order to have later on food. Umazra'im tme'im. The Torah said in Leviticus 11 verse 37 that if you have the creeping animals that attach the seed, so the moment that you plant it in the ground, you sow it in the ground, that seed become pure. The ground purified the seed. So they said, Umazra'im tme'im. If you have a seed plants that are ritually impure, right, by attaching a creeping animal, kevan shezra'an bakarka tehorin, the moment you plant it in the ground, it render purity. Zru'im ve'omdim lo kol sheken. You have those who are already planted, they are pure, even they come in contact with creeping animal. So what do you derive from that? In comparison, you said that if the husband manner of the revocation applies to annul the vow of his wife after she made them, for sure it can avoid from making them in effect at all. Shma mina, you derive from that, lo chaylin, they do not take effect altogether. Now, it's important to know that the Khatam Sofer asks a question about the law of Pesach. As you know, the issue of Pesach is if you take a seed that contain chametz and you're planting them before Pesach, you have issues with that, right? Or the Chelkat Yoav asks a question about dough, batzek. The question is, in those days they used to do it Yechud Shiva. They used that to make chairs. So the question is, can you say that since it contained a chametz, so you originally take those seed, and the purpose is litzorech zri'ah, to plant it in the ground, so therefore you don't have a kinyan chimutz, or you said not. So it's a Chelkat Yoav discussion. B'Rabbanan lo darshi kal b'chomer, and the sages indeed not exposed the kal b'chomer the way that Rabbi Eliezer said, ve'atanya, we learned in the Braita, יכול ימכור אדם את ביתו כשהיא נערה. Biblically speaking, the Torah said in the book of Exodus chapter 21 verse 7 that the father has the authority to sell his minor daughter. What does that mean? Here we talk about manner of betrothed. So the parents basically can set up a matchmaking, meaning two parents of two minors can set them up, or a parent of a male or a person who is in the age of maturity can set up with the father a manner of kinyanim, meaning the betrothed of a minor. She can reject it when she reached the age of adulthood, but biblically speaking, the father have that authority. אמרת קל וחומר, מכורה כבר יוצאה, the moment that happened during the age of minority, she transfer from the one who basically her master to the Gemara said in Tractate Kiddushin, page 4, that it transferred at that moment. אינה מכורה, אינו דין, שלא תימכר. If it is not for sure that one was not sold prior to becoming na'ara, she cannot be sold to begin with one she become na'ara. So here you derive from that also the idea that the sages accepted the view of Rabbi Eliezer that something that can change certain situation, for sure it can change something that consequence from that. So why they don't hold also in regards to annulment the same way as Rabbi Eliezer hold, that if the husband can annul his wife vow from the moment she made that vow, how much so that he can annul their vows retroactively. 76b, in בעלמא דרשי קל וחומר ושנאחה דאמר קרא אישה יקימנו ואישה יפרנו. In general the sages follow Rabbi Eliezer, but here is different because you have a smichut, you have the attachment of the psukim between the right of the husband to approve his wife vows and also his right for annulment, for revocation of her vow. Et שבא לכלל הקם בא לכלל הפר, whatever become eligible for approval or get eligible for nullification. ועת שלא בא לכלל הקם לא בא לכלל הפר, whatever is not confirmed to be revoked cannot be confirmed to cannot confirm to be approved, cannot meaning if you have vow that were not yet made, you cannot revoke it. You cannot tell me that all the vow, he said to her that all the vow that you are going to make will be in effect. Why? Because those vows will not pronounce yet. The Mishnah now speaks about the kavanah, the intent of the Torah, using the term of Yom Shom'o, when the husband heard. This is again book of Bamidbar, chapter 30. So Torah speaks about the husband hearing her speaking during that day. So the Mishnah said, Hafarat Nedarim, when you make this type of nullification, revocation of vows, Kol Hayom, you can do it all the day that the husband or the father heard about the Neder. So the idea is, meaning the day that begin with, begin at night and following the night, which means always the time of the completion is the beginning of the following night, and it's not depend upon the exact hour of hearing the vow. Again, to understand the concept, we may think that since the Torah used the term Yom, we may think that that's applied to 24 hours from the time he heard that. Here the Mishnah tells us that it happens during the day until the sun set, right? Yesh badavar lehakel uleachmir, sometimes is lenient and sometimes is stringent. How? Keitzad nadra belelei Shabbat, meaning she made a vow at the time the Shabbat is about to begin. Yafer, the father or the husband, can revoke her vow beleilei Shabbat uveyom HaShabbat ad shetechshach, which means they have full 24 hours to revoke her vow, and this is example of leniency when it's come to the time of annulment of vows. Now, nadra im chashecha, however, if she made a vow, she took a vow with nightfall approaching, so here it's already Shabbat before the sunset, and we discussed the other day about two different shitot, the Geonim and the Shitat Rabbeinu Tam. Rabbeinu Tam usually extended the time of Shabbat. If you notice, there are those who make Havdalah later, by the Rabbeinu Tam's time. Anyway, Mefer, they can do their revocation ad shelo techshach, which means until it's the time of the sunset. So that's a stringency. So here the Ran tells us another thing we'll derive from that matter of vow you can annul on Shabbat, even the vow is not necessarily related to Shabbat. It can be a vow over other manners. Still you can revoke them on Shabbat. As the Ran, שאם חשכה ולא הפר, אינו יכול להפר. Since if it become dark and it not yet nullify the vow, he cannot nullify it anymore. So it's example of a way of nullification, period. So there is a Rabbi Akiva Iger that have a discussion. If she made a vow bein hashmashot, at the time of the twilight, how you treated. Why? Because let's think together. Twilight is what? Is day or not? Night. Is not here, not there. So it can happen that she made her vow during the day, and the husband or the father revoked the vow when it's already night, right? And since we make a time of separation each day by the sunset, how you treated? You treated the previously or you treated the upcoming? Anyway, it's a discussion by Rabbi Akiva Igel. Gemarrah. Tanya. Hafarat Nedarim. It's taught in the Braita. When you have nullification of vows, how you do it? Kol Hayom. All the day that the husband or the father heard about their vow, which is up to the end of the day, but not more. Rabbi Yossi ברבי יהודה ורבי אלעזר ברבי שמעון אמרו מעת לעת. They hold that from that very moment they heard the vow until the following days. So מעת לעת meaning the 24 hours, and not necessarily up till the sunset. All right? Mai ta'ama de tanakama. What's the reason for the first view that you revoke the vow only by the end of the day? The Amar Kra, the Torah said in the book of Numbers chapter 30 verse 6, Beyom Shom'o. So it means that particular day. So the Chebiner Rav asked a question. You heard the Chebiner Rav Elliot? Yeah. Okay, so he asked a question. What do you mean Yom Shom'o? What is Yom? What do you mean by saying Yom Shom'o? He said, here are proof. Ulkachtem lachem bayom harishon. When it's come to about a meaning, Ulkachtem lachem bayom harishon, it's that day. Ubayom hashmini, mol besarato, the brit milah, the circumcision, you do it. Ubayom hashmini, that day of the 8 days. So the Chebiner Rav tried to say that Yom meaning that day, from these two sources, versus Shabbat, when Shabbat is basically day and night, because you start the Shabbat when the sun set on Friday night. So is that depend on that particular word of Beyom or Yom or not? Anyway, you have a response on that. V'Rabbanan, so which means Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon, that they hold that you can have me'et le'et, meaning you can have 24 hours from the time the husband heard. Mai ta'amayu dichtiv miyom el yom, because they said in the book of Bamidbar, chapter 30, verse 15, miyom el yom. What does that mean, miyom el yom? From day to day. So you have this concept of nullification that you can have even between one day and the following night. That's the way we treated, for example, Shabbat, right? Uletanakama haktiv miyom el yom. But according to the first view, they said from day to day, which is the 24-hour period for nullification. So he said itztrich. So it's basically the two different views, right? So why you need this pasuk? The I biyom shomo avamina bimama in bilalalo. If we have that the word biyom shomo, we meant to say during the day but not at night. Ktiv miyom el yom, which is the 24. Uleman damar miyom el yom aktiv biyom shomo. It's written biyom shomo. So why you have it that one? Itzrich. Di ktiv miyom el yom avamina mechad b'shabbat lechad b'shabbat leiferla, which means you can make this annulment from this Sunday to the following Sunday. Ktiv b'yom shomo, meaning that day, the 24 hours, as the one said, and that's it. So the Rogatchov, the great Rogatchov, the ingenious rabbi, he brought a Yerushalmi, who bring a scenario, a case of a woman that make a vow, and the husband was there, but unfortunately he was for some reason paralyzed for a couple of hours, God forbid, for health reason. So now if you tell me Yom Shom'o, meaning it has to be that day, what do you mean? Let's say if for 4 hours he wasn't able to speak, paralyzed. Now it's a sunset. So you tell me that he lost his right to revoke her vows or not? Because if you go by the Miyom El Yom, right? What is Miyom El Yom? From day to day, which means you pass the 24 hours, right? Or you tell me Biyom Shom'o, that day, so you can do it later. So he basically said Miyom El Yom, if you go by that view, so you lost. It's over. If you go by the pasuk Biyom Shom'o, the day that he heard, which means B'diavad, after the fact, if the husband, God forbid, was paralyzed for that time, as long as it's a framework of Biyom Shomo, he can still use that right in a manner of later on. So that's basically lekula, that's basically a leniency, that you have this form of 24 hours of annulment, so you can go either way. If you tell me lekula, that is 24 hours, it turned to be stringent. Why? Because if he didn't feel well, he lost the time. If you tell me that you go stringent, that it has to be biyom shomo that day, it's actually lekula, it's actually lenient. Why? Because if he didn't feel well, he still have the right to annul a vow as long as it's a frame of the day. Anyway, that's the Rogatchov. So אמר רבי שמעון בן פזי, אמר רבי שמעון בן לוי, here you have a פסק הלכה, אין הלכה כאותו הזוג, the halacha is not according to this pair, which is Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Dr, Rabbi Eliezer ben Shimon. So you think that they are the majority, but the Rosh explained because the way that it's written, it's miyom el yom, so you go by the Tanakama. So it means that only that day until they hear. Levi sabar lemebad ka'ari Tanai, amar lerava amar Habibi meaning my uncle, and halacha k'oto azug. You go by either by the idea of the majority, or you tell me that that mistabra, that's the way that's appeared, the proper halacha. That hafara, annulment, revocation of vows, happen to be only up to that evening, that time of the sunset. Now, up to this point, the Gemarrah dealing only with annulment of vows by the either father or husband. Now, the Gemarrah going to a new subject, which is annulment of vow by a sage. So here, the Ran said that, by the way, they're going to speak about hanhaga, a certain way that Chia Barav used to read. Chia Barav, Shade Gira Uvadik. Chia Barav, son of Rav, he will shoot an arrow and examine the vow at the same time. So either you go by the way, it is a disputation how you annul vow, either by the scholar or you have a bed din of 3, right? So the question is, there are 2 components. One is called petach and one is called charata. Petach meaning you find a way that something, if you do know that so and so happened, you make that vow. Or charata is just an act of remorse. A person expresses his contrition, and by doing so, he's already out of that vow. So he purposely, one way, they said that he just walking or throwing arrows, which means he said that what I'm doing is, I don't need to sit in a bed-in session or do all of that. The moment he expresses his remorse, it's over. I don't need to extend the idea of petach in addition to that. Rabbi Baravuna yativ v'ka'im. So either he was standing or sitting when he made this annulment, not only sitting. So it means that, again, it's enough to have charata. You don't need petach. So the Tashbetz and also the Ralbag said that basically you can make annulment miyom el yom. So it means that 24 hours from the time of the Neder. The Rosh said that the reason that you bring these stories of Chia Barav, it's because he wants to show how far is the 24 hours, which is like Rabbi Baravuna. He throw the arrow until the place that the sun set, to tell people that that's the framework of time you can make annulment of vows. So the psak halacha, the bottom line, the halacha is that when it's come to afarat nedarim, to annulment of vow, it's only biyom shom'or, which means that time until the sun set, and not extending that to a more time by any means.
Boyachem leshuloim malachai yeshuloim malachai